to strike the count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Reds Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkand to discuss a 7-2 loss, Daniel, that didn't feel that close.
Yeah, that was certainly a baseball game that I watched. That's about all I got there. Not the most exciting game, that's for sure.
We joked. I mean, not only was this game bad, it was also long, which doesn't help. Nearly 3 hours for the Dodgers to lose 7-2. Of course, they didn't even score the 2 until there was 1 or 2 outs in the ninth inning. The Reds manager decided to make this game as long as humanly possible by initiating like a 45-second challenge of a play at the plate and then changing pitchers up 7-0 in the ninth inning. That may seem petty, but that's just how bad this game was. The Dodgers snapped their streak of 22 consecutive games, allowing 4 or fewer runs. They looked lethargic, and I know San Francisco to LA is not a long trip, but it sure seemed like, Daniel, the late night last night, getting into Los Angeles whenever they got in and trying to get ready for this one, they just kind of looked sleepy.
Yeah, no, definitely was low energy all night, and obviously they didn't exactly trot out their best lineup tonight, I would say, so they were already facing that deficit. And then, you bring in a team like the Reds, a young team who likes to run, and they took it to the Dodgers tonight. I mean, Ellie De La Cruz, not only could they not get that guy out, but they couldn't get him out on the bases either until late. Barnes finally threw him out, but he stole 4 bases, scored 3 runs. So yeah, it was just one of those nights where, kind of nothing was going right for the Dodgers. They didn't have a lot of energy. Glasnow, wasn't at his best, couldn't really control the run game there, and they made him pay for it. So yeah, just one of those nights that, over the course of 162 games, you're probably going to have, about 5 of these or so, and they're definitely not fun, but the good news is there's another game tomorrow.
Yep, exactly. Lots to play. Here's a stat to sum things up for the Dodgers offensively tonight. Of the 13 hardest hit balls tonight, 12 came off the bat of the Cincinnati Reds. Teoscar Hernandez had the second hardest hit ball of the night. Ironically enough, it was a lineout. The Reds had the other 12 in that group. Guys like Will Benson, Stuart Fairchilds, Tyler Stevenson, Mike Ford, Jaimer Candelario, Santiago Espinal, Spencer Steer, and of course, Ellie De La Cruz, some of the names who had balls that were lasers. So we'll get into this one. We'll get into Tyler Glasnow's struggles. We'll get into the update we got today about Emmet Sheehan undergoing surgery. Fabian Ardaya, The Athletic, reporting that is Tommy John surgery. We'll talk Otani bobblehead stuff, and then we'll get out of here with some questions as well. But Daniel, this one didn't start off great. You felt like, I'll be honest, I looked and I said, Tyler Glasnow for the Dodgers. We had a Reds guy on this morning talking about the series. He pointed out how Nick Lodolo, their best pitcher, was slated to start today. Surprisingly ends up on the injured list. So Nick Martinez, who's not even a normal part of the Reds rotation, ends up the guy starting. You're thinking Nick Martinez versus Tyler Glasnow, Dodgers versus Reds in Dodger Stadium, Shohei Ohtani bobblehead night. Like, everything's setting up for this to be 7-2 in favor of the Dodgers. But right from the get-go, Will Benson, 107.5 miles an hour off the bat on the first plate appearance of the game. And that was an omen that we may not have understood at the time.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that ball was absolutely crushed, and he pimped it as he should have. But yeah, I mean, obviously not the best start there, and then Ellie gets on base and he scores, so it's 2-0 before you get to the plate. Like you said, this should have been a night, like on paper, that the Dodgers should have won, but I don't know what it is about the Reds. I feel like it's always the Reds every year. Like, the Dodgers are most of the time the best team in baseball, and Reds the most of the time are one of the worst or among the worst. Yeah. And they always seem to have the Dodgers number, and that was again the case tonight. Obviously still 3 more games to go, but I do think, being able to control the run game, especially against a team like this, is important. And we saw how that could cost you tonight. I mean, we've seen it in the past. Last year, it was a huge issue, obviously, but looking ahead, they're playing the Reds, like 5 or 6 more times in the next week and a half or whatever. So they're going to have to control that run game, or else those guys are going to just keep running, and that's going to lead to runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Austin Barnes behind the plate, one of the worst in baseball when it comes to like pop time, arm strength, that type of thing. Will Smith is better than Austin Barnes. He hasn't been elite at any point from that perspective. And a lot of those stolen bases didn't seem close. He did get Elly De La Cruz one time late in the game, so that was good for him. But I think it's a great point by you, and that didn't come up in our preview of this series. And in hindsight, it probably should have, because Elly De La Cruz, who's already got 30 stolen bases through
30
games, which is insane. He's the first guy to do it since Kenny Lofton, Ricky Henderson before that. But I mean, just do the math. 30 stolen bases in 44 games, what that maps out to in 162. We're talking at 110 stolen base pace or something like that. So insane stuff. And that's before playing the Dodgers. He gets 6 more games against these guys. It's a guaranteed stolen base every time he gets on, it feels like. The way this one played out, the Reds put 2 runs on the board in the top of the first. Dodgers could not get anything going offensively. Chris Taylor, first Dodger to get a base hit, which tells you everything you need to know. Reds tack one on in the third. They add one more in the fifth. And then from there, it was kind of the ugly top of the ninth. They get the RBI double, add another run. Then there's the wild pitch, I guess, pass ball, whatever they call it, a strike 3, out number 3, but can't get it done. And so the Dodgers, again, go down 7-0. They tack on 2 runs with 2 outs in the 9th inning on a Gavin Lux RBI single. But that was about it. Let's talk Tyler Glasnow tonight. This is a guy who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball so far this season. Again, you're looking at Glasnow versus the Reds, an offense that is around league average, but that's missing some guys. And so you're thinking, all right, this is going to be an opportunity for him to shine. 92 pitches, but just didn't feel his usual dominant self. He did have 14 whiffs on 50 swings, but 4 earned runs for Glasnow is not what you expect from your ace against the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, I would say not his best start, but I also, I don't think he was, particularly bad or anything. You kind of just laid it out. Obviously, he gives up the leadoff home run. That ball was crushed. That was not a great pitch. But after that, it was just kind of let a guy on base. He steals a base or 2, and then they drive him in, a run here, a run there. And going back to the run game here, obviously, when you let a guy on and he's able to steal second and maybe steal third, that then you let up the possibility of, hey, if there's a wild pitch here, he's all of a sudden scoring now, and you haven't really pitched that bad. So that's kind of what we saw tonight. It's not like he was getting hit around and they were putting big rallies together. It was just kind of a run here and a run there.
Yeah.
Large due in part to the stolen bases. I do think he was missing a lot of bats. I think he struck out 8 or whatever it was. So that's kind of what you've come to expect from him. But yeah, overall, definitely not his best. But at the same time, he kind of kept them in the game, and the offense just never really showed up.
Yeah, I see some people in the chat, which, by the way, we appreciate the folks on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube that are joining us live, talking about the lineup construction. I think a lot of Dodgers fans had the same reaction. You see Betts, Otani, and Freeman at the top, exactly what you want. Teoscar in the 4 spot, okay, that's fine. Will Smith, day off. Kike Hernandez, Gavin Lux, Chris Taylor, James Outman, Austin Barnes, not exactly what you're looking for in a 5 through 9. And there's probably some all due respect to Gavin Lux, who's been hitting the ball a little bit better. He had a pair of hard hit balls tonight. And in fairness, Chris Taylor had a hit tonight as well. The offense as a whole sucked. But what was your reaction to seeing Kike, Lux, Taylor, Outman, Barnes as the 5 through 9 tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us can agree that when we see that, we don't exactly get excited. And I know that the bottom of the order has pretty much been a struggle all year, regardless of who's been there. But that's kind of the worst of the worst right there, all in the lineup at the same time. I know, we're not at the end of the day, one loss is not the end of the world. The Dodgers still have a very comfortable division lead, but I think we're both on the same page. Maybe start 2 of those guys instead of 4 or 5 of them, so you could at least have a 1 through 6 that's solid enough that you feel like you have a chance to compete. So not the end of the world, but it is frustrating, when you see guys who pretty much have no chance. And, you mentioned Nick Martinez, it's not like he's a Cy Young candidate out there, and he looked like one tonight. So it was really frustrating.
Yeah, I joked that this was we have Tyler Glasnow going against their bullpen game lineup, and it backfired on the Dodgers, because to your point, Glasnow, 7 base runners in 5 innings is not great, but it's also not terrible. 8 strikeouts, just 6 hits, keeps them in it a little bit. The 4 earned runs. Vesia gives them 5 outs on top of it. So the Dodgers were well into the 7th, 8th inning, having not scored any runs and only allowed 4. I've said that if the Dodgers pitching staff can keep it around 4 or 5, then it's on the offense to produce. Obviously, it gets out of hand late, but in part, it's because the offense was as bad as advertised. I mean, they end up with 4 hits and 3 walks, but how many of those were in? I believe 2 of those hits and 2 of those walks, or at least one of those walks, were all in the 9th inning. Is that right? Was it 2 walks?
I don't know about the walks, but I do know they only had 2 hits going into the 9th.
It was 2 walks. It was 2 hits and 2 walks in the 9th inning for the Dodgers. And again, they finished with 4 hits and 3 walks. So not great stuff there from the Dodgers offense. Some other notes there. I mean, coming into the 9th inning, the Dodgers offense had scored just 1 run across their last 17 innings. Of course, they add 2 with 2 outs there. They had no hits from 1 out in the 4th inning on until that 9th inning as well. So it just, I mean, I feel like I don't mean to beat a dead horse here on this offense. I'm with you. We're not worried. Like a 17 inning stretch with 1 run is not something I'm going to lose sleep over. We already made that mistake one time. I shouldn't say we. I didn't make that mistake. You didn't make that mistake. Others made that mistake a month ago, panicking, and then they rallied off 14 out of 16, and the offense was averaging 6 runs a game. The pitching was awesome. I recognize, like, I feel like sometimes we come on these post-game shows, and I recognize that right now, what it feels like, because we just invested 3 hours of our lives watching that, and here we are investing another hour of our lives discussing that. And so it's hard to, like, be like, who cares, when we all just spent 4 hours watching it. But in the grand scheme of things, the Dodgers are telling us with their lineup what they cared, how much they cared about this game, and they'll shake this one off. It's baseball. There's a reason they play 162 of these, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like there's going to be ebbs and flows throughout the course of the season. Like we just saw a stretch of 14 out of 16, whatever it was, where seemingly the Dodgers could do no wrong. And then here's 2 nights in a row where the offense doesn't really show up and it feels like the sky is falling again. But, at the same time, there's another game tomorrow, and I'm sure, they'll get back on it, over the weekend here. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the offense just didn't show up. And I think probably something to keep an eye on, maybe, like we saw tonight, they went with the opener, like they started a lefty and then they went to a righty, like in the 3rd inning or whatever it was. And considering like the Dodgers have a very like platoon heavy, like back half of their lineup, I would not be surprised at all if other teams kind of started doing that. Like, unless obviously if you have like your ace or whatever going, you're not going to have an opener for him. But if it's a guy like Nick Martinez, doesn't hurt to throw in a lefty there to start, get a couple relievers to get through the lineup once and then hand it over to Martinez. So, that's kind of the danger of platoons. So it'll be interesting to see if more teams kind of do that.
Yeah, you mentioned it. 3 guys combined to get the first 6 outs for the Reds, just 1 hit and 1 walk, a pair of strikeouts across that before Martinez came in the 3rd, and he worked 5 innings, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts to lower his season ERA to 4.23, to give you some context there. It was Shohei Ohtani bobblehead night. That was a big deal. Some quotes from Dave Roberts. Well, first of all, 53,527 was the announced attendance tonight. Everyone saw the pictures. If you were on social media, people lining up 4 hours before the game. This was the largest major league crowd of the season. It was the largest at Dodger Stadium since 2019, so pre-pandemic, to give you some context there. I don't know, like, in a weird way, I'm kind of surprised it was this big of a deal, because I know bobbleheads are a big deal, and I know it's Ohtani's first bobblehead, but like, you could go buy Ohtani bobbleheads online. Like, it's not like they're impossible to find. I guess, were you surprised that it was like, I wasn't surprised it was sold out. I'm surprised people were lining up 4 hours beforehand.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say as well. Like, you expect to sell out on pretty much any bobblehead night, but especially, Shohei's first. But lining up 4 hours earlier or whatever seemed a bit egregious. Like they got 40,000 of those things. So you just don't, get there an hour early or whatever, and you'd be okay. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that there were that many people there and that they weren't treated to a very good game. Yeah. And they got the, D- lineup or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But hey, those bobbleheads might be kind of worth something. So I guess at the end of the day, if you got to do what you got to do to get one of those things, and you got the time, so be it.
Yeah. I saw someone in the chat earlier commenting there was the gray ones that they only made like I think it was it 1,700 or 1,400 or something. There were alternate jersey ones that were even rarer, and somebody was saying those were up on eBay for like $1,500. So I don't know if that's
Oh.
an accurate number.
Well, if that's true, then 4 hours. I would have been there 6 hours early.
Yeah, and of course the irony is you have no guarantee. Like there wasn't any
Yeah.
way to know if you were going to get that. But yeah, crazy stuff there. Dave Roberts said this: it's exciting. Shohei certainly creates a stir. I can't imagine what it's like outside. It's good. It's great for Shohei. Good for the Dodgers. It's going to be a hot ticket item to be lucky enough to grab one of those. The more I see him every day, I realize how special of a person and a ball player he is. The media was like, well, there's actually a line down the hill, Dave. And he's like, is that right? Yeah, not surprising. And then I thought this was funny. Someone asked Dave if he likes the bobbleheads. Quote, I think I keep them somewhere. They're around because I get one for each bobblehead night. So I've got quite the collection. There you go. Dave Roberts, bobblehead collector.
He's probably got like a closet that he just throws them in and shuts the door. And every time he opens it, they come like falling down on him. They give out a lot of bobbleheads these days. So if he gets them all, I know my dad goes to most games. So we got most of them at our house and they definitely start to stack up. I'm trying to think who, other than like, I think I have like 5 or 6 Clayton Kershaw ones. And then after that, I'm trying to think like who's had the most.
There's probably a handful of Bellinger ones, I would imagine, in there.
Yeah. A few Bellinger ones, few Seager ones, but yeah, I definitely have multiples, and I just have like each one stacked up with the newest one in front. Usually,
I love it. Did your dad make it out tonight?
I'm sure he did. I mean, it's Otani bobblehead night. He wasn't missing that.
Was he there 4 hours early? Not there 4 hours early though, huh?
No, definitely not 4 hours early. So hopefully he was there early enough to actually get one.
Yeah, I see Hawaiian Kira asking if I'm going to get an Otani bobblehead. I did get one from Foco, so it's somewhere behind me. I think it is right there is the Otani bobblehead I got. So it's good stuff. It's got some palm trees in it. It's a cool deal. So I've got one. But yeah, good stuff there. The other bit of news that came out about the Dodgers, which was actually dramatically worse than the 7-2 loss that we all just witnessed, was that Emmet Sheehan underwent elbow surgery. Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic adding context that he underwent Tommy John surgery. Daniel, this is a guy that coming into the season, I think a lot of people had high expectations for. There were arguments about where he stood in the pecking order of Dodger prospect pitchers and pretty much how close he was to Bobby Miller. A lot of people really liked what they saw. He comes in injured. I kind of joked, like, is it really an injury or is this just load management? And then Emmet Sheehan's kind of like, well, it really wasn't my shoulder. It was my elbow, and I'm definitely going to be back. And then kind of out of the blue, I mean, we hadn't gotten any updates, so I guess not really out of the blue, but Tommy John surgery for Emmet Sheehan, meaning, here we are on May 16th. He's going to miss all of this season and a chunk of next year as well.
Yeah, I would guess most likely close to all of next year, like considering he's so young and they want to protect that arm. But yeah, I mean, obviously very unfortunate news. I think like you said, a lot of us had high expectations for Sheehan, this year coming off how he finished last year. Like I think we're kind of expecting him to have the season that Gavin Stone has had so far. Yeah. And you're right. Like when he starts the year on the IL and we don't really know what's going on, the thought definitely crossed my mind. Like, hey, maybe they're just kind of limiting his innings and that he's going to be full go in the second half or whatever. Cause that makes, sense for a young guy who hasn't really had a full major league workload. But obviously the news comes today that it's Tommy John, which is never great. And it was like a forearm issue. So I think, like now, like we have it in our heads, like whenever we see a forearm issue with a pitcher, chances are that's not great. Like it might not always lead to Tommy John, but there's a good chance, like if you see forearm, that's something that's not good. So yeah, I mean, we'll see Sheehan in 2026 probably. The good thing is that the Dodgers have a lot of pitching depth still, and some guys are, supposed to come back. You mentioned Bobby Miller; he should be back. He started throwing, so I think they'll be okay when it comes to pitching depth. But yeah, Sheehan was definitely a nice guy to have just for those depth purposes. He had options, so you could, bounce back and forth between AAA. So you never want to be without one of those guys, especially a guy like him who has a lot of promise. And I don't want to say necessarily like ace upside, but like, high end upside from what we saw from him last year.
Yeah, I was looking for kind of a recap here. And so in March, he experienced shoulder discomfort and general soreness, which led to Roberts saying he's going to start on the IL. Though it was a shoulder injury initially, when he was placed on the IL, it was described as forearm inflammation, transferred to the 60-day IL in March. And then in mid-April, he began throwing to live hitters. Roberts said the arm, quote, hadn't been responding the way they had hoped. And then here we go. Decision made to have surgery and undergoes it. So, tough stuff, like the MLB Trade Rumors points out, like, good news for him is that he'll be collecting major league pay and major league service time while on the 60-day IL. So good news for him. He's 24 years old, so there's still plenty of time for the Dodgers and for Emmet Sheehan to kind of take their time and recover on this. But the point that you made, I think, is the key one. Well, all the caveats of you can never have too much starting pitching deserve to be said. Like, I know somebody in the chat is already like preparing to tweet that as I say what I'm about to say. The Dodgers have a lot of pitching this year. Like, this feels like less of a blow than obviously it would have been last year, because they've got Clayton Kershaw, who's due back at some point. They've got Landon Knack, who's due, is available when they need him. Bobby Miller is due back very, very soon. Dustin May could be due back at some point. And so with that amount of depth, it does feel like if they are ever able to withstand a loss of a guy like this, especially considering he hasn't pitched this year, this feels like the year. Now, obviously, that could come back to bite me. I see some famous last words, the person in the chat. Yes, of course. But I mean, realistically, the Dodgers right now, like, the projection is 3 or 4 months from now that they could have 9 starting pitchers, guys that are available and guys that could be competing for a spot. We all know that number won't be 9, but the odds that it's going to be 4 feels impossibly low.
For sure. And I think, honestly, like, Gavin Stone's, like, he's never been more relevant than ever for this rotation. Like, he's now he went from a guy who was kind of forgotten going into spring training to he has a nice spring and earns a rotation spot. Like, great, but how long is he going to last? And now he's pitched well, and now he's kind of turned into a guy that they're counting on and they kind of need in the back end of that rotation. So you're right. They, Landon Knack is, we saw him come up for a few starts and he actually looks really good, and he's just kind of chilling at AAA right now. So they're okay right now. And obviously when it gets closer to the deadline, you could kind of reassess. And if you need to go get a starter, you could always do that as well. But I'd say right now, the way, the bottom of the lineup has looked, the way the bullpen guys have been injured and such, like, the starting rotation is the least of my worries at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I was just looking, there was a play at first where Shohei Ohtani, there was a pickoff attempt. The ball ended up hitting Shohei Ohtani. Our guy Blake texting from the stadium that there's a giant Band-Aid on the back of Ohtani's leg where he was hit. Obviously, he went on to steal second base after the pickoff attempt and stayed in the game all the way until the 9th inning as the DH. So stayed in the game belongs in quotes there. But I can't imagine a pickoff attempt, baseball hitting you in the back of the leg is something to worry about.
Yeah, no, rub a little dirt on it. He'll be okay.
Yeah. This was Dave Roberts' quote on the streak of 22 games allowing 4 or fewer runs being snapped. Quote, "It's been impressive. We got great starting pitching clearly, and guys in the bullpen all stepped up." Ramirez, not a member of the bullpen crew that had stepped up. The guy had to wear it a little bit today. So, that's part of his job. Shout out to our guy, Michael Grove, not being the guy that has to wear it in these games anymore. They've got 3 or 4 guys below him on the depth chart, I think.
I will say, like, shout out to some of those guys that have come up the last couple days, because even though, they've lost the last 2 games and the offense hasn't showed up, they've actually gotten, like, their main bullpen guys a rest, just because, Hernandez, and I forgot honestly, he got an option today. I forgot who the second guy who pitched last night. I forgot his name.
Salazar.
Oh, Salazar. Okay. And then, like you said, Vesia gave them some length today, and then Ramirez kind of wore it at the end there. So they some of their, the Blake Trinans, Daniel Hudsons are fresh and ready to go tomorrow.
Yeah, that's been one of the benefits for the Dodgers throughout this stretch, is that despite, not maybe having a full battery of guys back there, again, I've said it before, if you can give those guys maximum amount of rest and let them pitch at their fullest capacity, you can patch it together. And that's exactly what the Dodgers have been able to do. So again, Dodgers lose 7-2 tonight. But the bigger, sadder news today is that Emmet Sheehan undergoes forearm elbow surgery. The Dodgers reporting that, Fabian Ardaya naming it as Tommy John surgery. Before we go any further, I want to chat about one of our newest sponsors. You've heard us talking about So Rare MLB. If you haven't joined yet, please go ahead, take a look at the link in the description and join. I've said that I feel like I'm repeating myself. I was not familiar with So Rare a few weeks ago. I am in. Like, I am checking my team constantly. The first competition of the week, Monday through Thursday, just ended. Shohei Ohtani not coming up to bat in the 9th inning. Not great for me, Daniel. I needed another AB. Needed a few extra points. Glasnow on my team. 8 strikeouts, good for business. Only 5 innings. Some earned runs, though, not so much. My buddy had Ellie De La Cruz. You can imagine the night Ellie De La Cruz had. I think it's 5 points for every stolen base. So he ended up with like 50 points himself. But basically, it's fantasy baseball. You draft a team of 10 players and you get their custom player cards. You keep those cards for the duration of basically those guys' careers. You build a team of 7-person lineups Monday through Thursday, and then a new competition that's starting tomorrow on Friday, Friday through Sunday, and then it resets. When you finish a competition, you get a card if you finish high enough. And so eventually you build out your team. You go from 10 to 11 to 12. Once you get up to 14, you can actually enter multiple competitions every week. And so from there, it becomes a little more exponential. But if you have not joined yet, So Rare MLB, you can join and get into a competition tomorrow. It is totally free to draft a team. So go ahead, check out So Rare MLB. Daniel, you've dabbled a little bit in So Rare, right? You got some Dodgers on your squad?
Yes, and it's not a great week to have half my squad as Dodgers. But yes, I have dabbled a little the last couple weeks, and it's been fun. I mean, I love fantasy baseball and this kind of scene. So yeah, this is right up my alley for sure.
I've got Yamamoto on the bump for the Dodgers this weekend. Just swapped out one of my guys, picked up the Mariners closer who had a couple saves. My guy Edwin Diaz, rough stuff from him this week. A pair of blown saves, not helping my team out. But check out So Rare MLB. You'll be hearing us talk a lot about it. It'd be fun to compete with you all as we go. Let's get into some questions. If you've got any of those, throw those in the chat. All caps questions. Might be a shorter show tonight. Not a ton to talk about. Glasnow was okay and the offense sucked. So that's what we've got there. Hey, I see Degenerate Gambler. Maybe, but this is free. This isn't gambling. My DraftKings account is a separate thing. And if you've been following my picks of the day, we're kind of killing it on DodgerHeads Daily. So, with all due respect, there we go. Dong wants to know, since the Dodgers are playing the Reds, how do you feel about cinnamon flavored candy and gum, Big Red, and hot tamales? I think it's atrocious. I think it's disgusting. I want nothing to do with hot tamales. I want nothing to do with cinnamon flavored things unless it's coffee cake, Daniel.
I agree 100%. And I'll even throw a Fireball, the alcohol, into the mix. That's like the cinnamon flavored whiskey or whatever it is. I don't even know. Nasty. No, thank you.
I see. I might have Fireball among the top of the ranked things that are cinnamon flavored, but yeah, it's not my favorite, and I've since graduated from college, and so now that I've left that stage of my life behind, we'll go there. Let's see some other questions here. Nothing in the chat yet. We'll wait for some of those to pour through. Here we go. Hawaiian Kira, should we be concerned that the offense goes quiet against the opponent's starting pitcher 1 through 3 in the rotation, like with Yu Darvish and Logan Webb? I mean, tonight they faced a bullpen game and the number 6 starter and struggled. So, look, Yu Darvish is good. Logan Webb is good. Sometimes good pitching beats good hitting. Like, I don't know. I saw people freaking out about the Dodgers offense, Daniel, and I know what we just watched, but like zoom out a little bit. They have the best offense in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the concern and like as more time goes by and the sample size gets bigger, like I do think the bottom of the order just has not produced. Like obviously the top 5 or 6 or whatever has been, everything you'd hope for from those guys. So I do think maybe, those 8-9 spots are a bit concerning. Like a guy like Andy Pages has cooled down. Obviously Chris Taylor hasn't got it going. Kike hasn't really got it going. Outman hasn't got it going. And I still think it's early. Like we're sitting here on May 16th. So it's not, we're not at the All-Star break yet or anything. So I still think, those guys should get more time to see if they could get it going. But overall, I don't think anyone should be concerned. Like last time I checked, the Dodgers have the biggest division lead in baseball by a mile. So we'll check back in around the start of October and we'll see, what the offense is doing then.
Look at this, Daniel. We got who are the Lakers going to hire? Daniel, if you didn't know, is the editor of Lakers Nation, one of our sister sites. You a big JJ Redick guy over there, Daniel?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I come on Dodger Blue and Dodger Heads to get away from all the Lakers chatter going on right now. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest JJ guy. Like, I'm always skeptical of a first-time head coach, especially when you're in a situation where it's like a win now. You know, a lot of pressure to win a championship, obviously. But I've kind of like talked myself into it just because that's kind of the way it's trending so far. I think it's early in the early in the cycle here. They're going to have a lot of interviews, so we'll see. But it's definitely looking like JJ so far, and so you just got to hope for the best. Like with all of these like assistant type coaches, you never really know.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Dodgers. If I think Dodgers fans are wild, I just pop into like one of Trevor's live streams and see the ideas and the trade ideas that people have. And like, I saw some people talking about their views of D'Angelo Russell compared to some other guys. And let's just say I don't agree with all those assessments, positively, negatively, all over the place. So I'll leave it at that. Here we go. We got a question here. Did you see what Reynaldo Yin did today? And will the Dodgers go after Mason Miller? Yin is a single A pitcher for the Dodgers, I believe.
Yeah.
He threw 104 miles an hour today. Mm-hmm. That seems fast, Daniel.
Yeah. No, and I think this guy is asking, like, will he be the Dodgers' like version of Mason Miller?
Got it.
Look, he throws really hard. If you look like at his minor league stats, he strikes out a lot of dudes, which makes sense for a guy that throws that hard. But like you said, he's in single A, so there's some development that needs to be still needs to happen there. But I do think, I'm excited about him. 20 years old, throwing that hard. Obviously, you got to make sure you protect the arm.
We just elbow, baby. Duct tape the elbow.
I'm sure some issues will pop up at some point, but yeah, I mean, hopefully he could keep developing and we haven't really seen the Dodgers develop necessarily like a closer since Kenley Jansen, pretty much.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe this guy could be their next, big thing.
And to be clear, Evan Phillips not counting as a developed guy because he came over at the major league level. Rob Hill tweeted this: since 2015, only 7 pitchers have thrown a pitch 104 miles an hour or faster. Tell me if you've heard of any of these guys, Daniel. Jordan Hicks, Johan Duran, Aroldis Chapman, Ryan Helsley, Camilo Duvall, and Hunter Green.
Yeah.
You know what all those guys have in common? They're all very good pitchers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And most of them are closer types as well. So
yeah. Yeah, and Hicks, who and Green, I guess, are the only 2 starters on that list. And Hicks used to be a closer, so really, it's just Hunter Green. This guy's a converted position player who's 20 years old. Command seems to be all over the place, but you throw 104 miles an hour, people are going to start paying attention to you pretty darn quickly there. Ozzy says, Daniel, I hear you. In October, people will complain about not fixing the offense in time for the playoffs. I mean, they literally have the best offense in baseball. I understand what we just watched, and if it's 2 days in a row of just watching this, they were averaging 6 runs a game over like a 19-game stretch in which they were winning everything. They have basically the 2 best offensive players in baseball are both on the Dodgers. They have another guy who's like top 5 in RBIs. They have like 6 guys in the top 30 for wins above replacement offensively. I understand like being reactionary, but I see people commenting on like Andrew Friedman's roster construction. What are we doing, people? What are we doing?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Also, like, look, if the bottom of the order is still like this bad in July, then I do think like we'll be sitting here around the trade deadline saying, hey, like, go get some sort of bench bat or outfield bat or whatever. Like, we're not saying like, don't make any moves, but I think on May 16th, there's not really much you could do right now. Like, I know the Luis Arraez trade, happened a couple weeks ago, but there's not too many trades that go down this time of year. So I think, who knows, we might see Miguel Vargas at some point. Like, he's been, mashing at AAA. Obviously we all were very much in favor of them calling up Andy Pages. We all love Andy Pages, but even he has shown like hitting in the big leagues is hard. So, they're going to go through these stretches, but I still think, like you said, they got the best offense in the league. They got one of the best records in the league. They got 3 Hall of Famers at the top 3 of their lineup, one of the best hitting catchers Teoscar Hernandez, who's been driving in runs like crazy. Like Muncy has been doing Muncy like things. So I don't think there's reason to panic just yet.
I mean, people love the Phillies, right? The Dodgers have more runs scored than the Phillies. Like, I don't know what offense you would look at in the league and be satisfied. There's not a team in the American League that had more than 216 runs coming into tonight. The Dodgers are at 239. It's a half a run better than every team in the American League. And it's basically the same in the National League with the exception of the Phillies, who, again, the Dodgers have more runs scored than the Phillies. So,
yeah. And I also think, like, obviously the last 2 days haven't been great, but right before that, the Dodgers won like 14 out of 16 or whatever it was, and seemingly could do no wrong. So, like, we'll talk in a week and we'll see if everyone's still complaining about the offense.
Yeah, they literally scored 10 runs 3 days ago. So, like, if you wanted to do some crazy math, they've scored 13 runs in the last 3 days. So that's not awesome, but it's not terrible either. So you could make the numbers say kind of whatever you want them to say. GI, I think this is interesting. Do you see a trend with the Dodgers and teams that play an aggressive brand of baseball, i.e. the Reds, Diamondbacks? Seems like a bit of a blind spot. It does feel like, Daniel, the catcher position from a throwing base runners out perspective is not a strength. Again, I would say Will Smith might be considered average in that regard. Austin Barnes, I'm not saying this because I'm a guy who typically doesn't love Austin Barnes. His pop time and his arm strength are like literally among the worst in Major League Baseball. I haven't checked it for 2024. Last year, he was like bottom 2 or 3 out of 30 or 40 guys who qualified. Do you see that as is that a fair assessment that teams that play aggressively, steal a lot of bases are extra problematic for the Dodgers?
I mean, we've seen it over the last couple seasons since they, made the bases bigger and guys have been stealing more. Like the athletic teams like the Reds, like the D-backs have definitely exploited that. And look, as a former pitcher myself, like I'm not going to let the pitchers off the hook here. Like a lot of it is on them. They got to be better at holding runners. Like, I mean, Tyler Glasnow, he's 6'8", like obviously not the fastest guy to the plate, and that's going to lead to stolen bases. So with a guy like him, you're kind of okay with it because he's obviously a great pitcher and strikes out a ton of dudes. But on a night like tonight, he got burned by it. So I think last year, like the first half of the season, they were like one of the worst teams ever, and I think they improved as the season went along. So I think when you see like nights like tonight happen, that's kind of how it becomes more of an emphasis. So we could kind of only hope that's the case moving forward, and guys pay more attention to that. But yeah, like you said, like their catchers, they don't have the best arms back there, the best pop times, and the pitchers are slow to the plate. So there's definitely a scouting report on that. And if teams have the ability to exploit that, they're gonna. So there definitely needs to be some adjustments somewhere. And some guys are great at holding runners. Like I think Yamamoto has been really good so far, but other guys like Glasnow and Paxton or whatever are just bigger guys and slower to the plate. So that's just naturally going to happen.
Yeah. Here we go. Catcher pop time and catcher throwing. I was going to try and take a look. I mean, here we go. Catchers caught stealing above average. Will Smith is first in Major League Baseball this year. It's an interesting stat. Tied with JT Realmuto in that category. Austin Barnes, let's see. I don't know if he's going to be on. Austin Barnes is 57th out of 62 in that category.
That means there's 4 or 5 guys that are worse, which seems impossible, but hey.
Yeah. Logan O'Hoppe, Tyler Stevenson, Keibert Ruiz, old friend Keibert Ruiz, Omar Narvaez, and Luis Camposano. Which Camposano couldn't even catch the baseball the other day when we were playing him. So, that's caught stealing rate. Let's see, catcher. Oh, here we go. Catcher pop time was the other one I wanted to look at. I'm surprised that Will Smith is that high. He's usually closer. Yeah, he's 14th in pop time. Austin Barnes, 51st out of 57 in pop time. So it's a bad combo if you're Austin Barnes. And again, I would say Will Smith probably not best in baseball, but he's probably about average. And it's pretty simple math. If you pop time is bad and your arm strength is bad, you're not going to throw a ton of guys out, kind of no matter what your pitchers do. Jason, interesting question. Scale of 1 to 10. Are you in favor of proceeding through the deadline with Mookie at short? I don't know how you put this on a scale of 1 to 10, but I get what he's asking. Yeah. How comfortable would you be with Mookie Betts playing shortstop the entirety of the year?
I'd be comfortable with it as long as you're getting production from the second base spot. Like if
Yeah.
Lux has been great defensively, and I do think one thing we haven't really talked about tonight, his bat is kind of starting to come around. Like he had a couple balls hard tonight. The last week or so he's been better. So if you're getting production from him, I'd be okay with it. But it also it depends on who's out there. Like if you could get a Willy Adames who's an expiring contract, like if the Brewers wind up selling, which they've been playing good baseball, so they probably won't be at this rate, then I'd be all for it. But if you're just bringing in like another version of Miguel Rojas or something to play short, then I'd rather just leave Mookie there. And yeah, he's not going to make every single play, but I think the defense has been fine enough to the point where obviously the offense is incredible. So you can live with it. So I think Gavin Lux is kind of the key to that. And I do think he deserves a longer leash. And we're starting to see him come around. Like he's obviously coming off a torn ACL. You can't expect him to just hit the ground running from day one. So we'll kind of see how that progresses in the next couple months. But yeah, I don't think shortstop is necessarily the biggest concern. Like I think even though Mookie hasn't been, a Gold Glover at short, he's been fine enough to the point where it's not hurting the team necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, he's been. I was listening to a podcast the other day. They had Adnan Virk from ESPN's MLB show on, and he was talking about Mookie Betts at shortstop, and the value that he's provided there is actually pretty remarkable. From just and defensive stats are always tricky ones to kind of measure and how you put a value on that, but among shortstops, Mookie Betts has kind of been pretty amazing from a fielding perspective. And I think the Gavin Lux follow-up, when you say it depends on the production, what would be, weighted runs created plus to me is a helpful stat because 100 is league average. I mean, if Gavin Lux was elite defensively at second base and giving you 100 to 105 weighted runs created plus, is that enough for you to feel good about Mookie at short?
Yeah. I think, obviously you'd like a little better than that, like 110 to 115 ideally. But if he's giving you slightly above average offense with the defense he's been playing, for a guy who's hitting 8th or 9th in your lineup, then that's definitely good enough. And look, I mean, we could talk about shortstop defense all we want, but it's not like when you look at the past stars that the Dodgers have had at the shortstop position, Trey Turner, Corey Seager, those aren't Gold Glovers either, and they weren't, necessarily as good as Mookie is offensively. So, I didn't hear anyone, calling for them to trade for a shortstop when Corey Seager was their shortstop or Trey Turner. So, I think Mookie's fine there. And I think the key is Lux. If he could play the way he has over the last week or so, then I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, totally agree. Michael wants to know, is there going to be a DodgerHeads show tomorrow? No, unfortunately not. That's why we had to move to a Thursday. We had some scheduling conflicts for tomorrow night. So apologies about that. This is the show that is in place of the Friday night show, but we'll be back with our normally scheduled show on Sunday and then Tuesday of next week as well. Tim G, how are bullpen games in general, both for the Dodgers in particular and MLB? Are they throwaway games or expected to be a good chance to win? It's interesting because I think the natural response is, well, if the other team's throwing a bullpen game, you kind of expect to win because it means they don't have a good enough starting pitcher to justify. But it also feels like on some nights, it's totally baffling to hitters to get thrown a different pitcher every single time you're up. It kind of breaks the rhythm of the game when there's guys coming in and out so consistently. Like when you see that, hey, the Reds are throwing a bullpen game today, and today was not really a true bullpen game because Martinez gave them 5, and we kind of knew Martinez was going to be maybe even more so than like a Ryan Yarbrough type.
Right.
But how do you when you see bullpen game on the other side as a guy following the Dodgers, do you get excited about that or do you get nervous?
No, I think you made a good point. Like seeing 9 different pitchers or, something along those lines, like a different pitcher every at bat, is definitely not easy for a hitter. Like I definitely think hitters would prefer to face a starter where you're seeing them 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times in a game, and you could, see their pitches, and then be ready to go the next at bat or whatever. So I would say bullpen games give you a pretty good chance to win, when compared to a starter. I would say it's the day after bullpen games that you really start to feel it because your bullpen short, like you're relying on your starter to give you length, and maybe he doesn't pitch great, and you kind of leave him out there longer than you should have, or he gets pulled early, and you don't have enough arms or whatever. So I would say it's the day after the bullpen game that you really feel it. But honestly, like I think, I don't have a stat to back this up, but if you went back like the last 3 or 4 years, since the Dodgers have been doing bullpen games, I would be willing to guess that in those bullpen games, they actually have a pretty good record.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I view it as if you don't have a good enough starter, most teams don't have 6 arms that are going to come out of the bullpen that scare you. And so the odds of all 6 of those guys pitching as well as the Reds guys did tonight seems low. So I would view it as it's a good chance to win. But again, the nights when it turns out to be the opposite, feel like the ones that stick in your head a little bit more.
Yeah. And I would add to that, like, it's not also like not necessarily about like giving yourself the best chance to win as much as it's about just protecting your starters. And we're seeing the Dodgers do it, and a lot of other teams, quite frankly, like they're going to 6-man rotations, or they're doing these regular bullpen games to give guys extra rest. And it's just because we just talked about Emmet Sheehan, like pitcher injuries are at an all-time high right now, and 162 games is a long season. Like you're not going to see too many guys that take the ball every 5th day and throw 220 innings or whatever. That's just not the day and age we live in anymore. So as much as it's about giving yourself the best chance to win, it's also about trying to keep your guys healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's get to some other questions here. David, we'll mix it up with the food one. You got a favorite cereal, Daniel?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Apple Jacks, phenomenal. Fruit Loops, I think you've laughed at me for that one a couple times. I'm a big Fruit Loop guy. That's pretty much it when it comes to cereal. I don't eat a ton of cereal.
Yeah, I'm with you. Honey Bunches of Oats is kind of my go-to, only because like Lucky Charms and Cinnamon Toast Crunch aren't really a sustainable diet for guys my age. My weird one is, and this fits because I live in Oregon, I like granola. So, it's what I got. But Honey Nut cereal.
I'll also say when I was a kid, I used to like Cocoa Puffs or Cocoa Crisps, mainly because it would turn the milk into chocolate milk, and then I drink that after. So yeah, I would add those to the list as well.
There you go. Pez Dispenser, where do the Dodgers as a team rank in average with runners in scoring position? They're currently 10th coming into tonight. They were 10th. They're hitting 266 with runners in scoring position. They've got a 353 on base percentage. That would be 9th. Interestingly enough, they are 1 spot ahead of the Reds in both of those categories. So pretty funny, but yeah, 417 plate appearances, 266 batting average with runners in scoring position. So there you go. Does that surprise you, Daniel? That feel about right?
I would have guessed they've been a little worse, honestly. Like it feels like they've struggled, but at the same time, there are games where they obviously, kind of put up a crooked number and have a lot of hits with runners in scoring position. So it makes sense, but I do still think there's kind of room for improvement there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hawaiian Kira wants to know the timeline on Hayward. I meant to look that up because I know he had like some rehab assignments that were headed.
He played the last 2 nights before today.
Here we go. Got it. Rejoined the Dodgers on Thursday.
Okay, so he could be back this weekend then.
Yeah, imminent, I guess, is the report from Jack Harris of the LA Times. Jason Hayward's return imminent.
Which I guess, brings up the question of what's the roster move going to be.
It's got to be Outman, right?
That would make the most sense. The way he struggled, like send him back to AAA, let him get every day at bats, work through whatever he's been going through. But at the same time, Andy Pages has been struggling just as much over the last week and a half or so.
Yeah.
And obviously we know Chris Taylor has been struggling all season. So
yeah. There's somebody in the chat, by the way, that misunderstood. The Mookie to Seager comparison was defensively. The point was that the Dodgers have never had an elite defensive shortstop. They've had guys that were incredible offensive players that were like passable at shortstop. And so Trey Turner, everybody remembers how bad he was in the postseason that one year. He was never like, neither of those guys was ever elite. You were kind of hoping for average. And I think Mookie Betts has been a slightly above average. So for the people going off in the chat and misinterpreting what was said, there you go.
we're Seager guys over here. We're definitely not trying to hate on Seager.
Yeah. Daniel is literally the biggest Seager guy that I know. So for what it's worth. Rod wants to know, where does De La Cruz rank in your list of the most exciting players in baseball? I joke with the Reds guys. Like, I hate seeing him play the Dodgers because he feels like he hits 500-foot home runs, steals 4 bases, and looks awesome doing all of it. So he's got to be near the top.
Yeah, no, he's top 5 right now for sure. I mean, he's electric.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Grayson wants to know, redundant because it ended tonight, where does our 23 straight games with pitchers giving up 4 or fewer rank in all time? I actually don't know. I believe 25 was the record, or 26. Like, they were getting close. So it's got to be one of the longest streaks in Major League history. But I don't think I ever heard where it kind of ranked. There we go. Somebody guessed that I was 56. Okay, self-correct. I'm reading through some of these comments. Jeff is 56. Wait, 36. Close. Yeah, you're getting really close there. Cesar Turris. Yes, Cesar Turris was a good defensive shortstop.
That's a great defensive shortstop.
Yeah, he played 100 years ago and couldn't hit. So he's got that going. He hit 300 like 1 year. So I get it. All right, folks, that'll do it. We nearly made it to the hour mark, but let's be honest. 3-hour show. Our guy Scott chiming in at 10:57 p.m.
Scotty.
We appreciate it. Scotty, we missed you, man. We needed the energy in here, but nearly 1,000 people. The Dodgers get smoked. Tyler Glasnow was fine. The offense was gross. 1 run in a 17-inning stretch. They tack on 2 at the end just to make it look like they cared, to make it look like they tried. But they slept through this one. So tomorrow we've got Paxton on the mound versus former Dodger great Frankie Montes. So hopefully the Dodgers can get a little bit going, maybe have an offensive outburst and get things going. So we appreciate everybody joining again. Check out So Rare MLB. We've got a link in the description below. You could check out DodgerBlue.com for the latest. Stay tuned here on the Dodger Blue YouTube page because our guy Blake is at the stadium and is getting tons of post-game content that I'm sure will be up on our YouTube page very shortly. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. Again, we appreciate everybody joining us. You can check out Daniel's stuff over at LakersNation.com, but we appreciate you joining us. Enjoy your night and go Dodgers.